Our moderator today is of Jordanian heritage. He was born in Lebanon. He immigrated to the United States in 1983. He's a full-time lecturer in Arabic at Stanford University and is the creator of the Arabology blog, as well as producer-host of the acclaimed Arabology radio program, which airs on KCSU, that's KZSU, Stanford, 90.1 FM. Through his work over the years, he's been a curator and a promoter and a connoisseur of Arab culture and arts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, Dr. Ramzi Salti.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, bonjour, welcome everybody. I am so excited to be moderating this event. I haven't met many of you, or actually I haven't met any of you personally, but it's thanks to Zoom. I guess this is one of the positive ways in which we can connect despite epidemics, despite some of the hurdles we all face as Arab Americans. I think this is the most joyous event, and I'm so glad that over the past week I've been looking into our panelists' work. Boy, have I been impressed. I've been a little intimidated. How am I going to do them justice? But I'm going to try to do that today. And I'm going to start by saying thank you to Dr. Amal and Warren for Arab America. This is such a special time for us to get together and for you guys to have founded this from nothing, from scratch, and then to look around and see people from all around the world joining us today to celebrate our heritage, and also to concentrate on the way that literature and music and other culture can empower us. I think I'm in seventh heaven, as they say. So Ramadan Mubarak to everybody. We're going to have some performances today. We're going to have a beautiful PowerPoint shared by Dr. Mamoun Sakkal. We're going to have two pieces of music by the one and only Layth Sidiq, who's going to play live today. He's actually, I think, in Spain, but the music will reach us as if he were next door, inshallah. I want to quickly introduce our panel today, and no specific order. I want to begin with Nathalie Handal. Nathalie, my gosh, I have been looking at your work and I am so impressed and humbled by the amount of work you've been doing. She's a poet and writer of a Palestinian family from Bethlehem, and her poetry draws on her experiences of dislocation, home, travel, and exile. Nathalie is the author of 7 poetry collections. The most recent is called Life in a Country album. That was the winner of the 2020 Palestine Book Award and a finalist for the Forward Book Award. And also the flash collection, The Republics, which won the Arab American Book Award and the Virginia Faulkner Award for Excellence in Writing. Nathalie is also the editor of several anthologies, including the groundbreaking classic, The Poetry of Arab Women, a contemporary anthology, which was the winner of the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Book Award and named one of the top 10 feminist books by The Guardian. Nathalie, you're here. I'll have you just wave to us as a quick hello. Marhaba, Nathalie. And then we're going to move on to the one and only Heather Raffo. Heather is an award-winning playwright and actress whose work has taken her from the Kennedy Center to the US Islamic World Forum, and from London's House of Lords to stages nationally and internationally. She's an American with Iraqi roots, and her plays have been championed by the New Yorker as an example of how art can remake the world. She is the author and performer of Noura, which was hailed by Gloria Steinem as a truly feminist refugee narrative, and 9 Parts of Desire, which ran off-Broadway for 9 months and has played across the US and internationally for over a decade. 9 Parts of Desire was the first play in the English language to feature an Iraqi female protagonist, and its commercial success helped birth a whole new genre in Middle Eastern and American theater. Heather's libretto for the opera Fallujah was the first opera about the Iraq War and the first to openly confront the alarming rates of veteran suicide. A film of the opera aired on PBS, accompanied by a documentary. Check it out. It's called Fallujah, Art, Healing, and PTSD. And her newly released anthology is called Heather Raffo's Iraq Plays, The Things That Can't Be Said. And that brings together Raffo's groundbreaking contribution, not only to the American theater, but also gives voice to nearly 2 decades of rarely examined traumas that have reshaped cultural and national identity for both Americans and Iraqis since the events of 9/11. Heather, ahla wa sahla fiki. You are joining us from New York, I think, today. Ahla wa sahla fiki. I'm going to move on to Dana Dajani. Oh my gosh. Dana, just watching your spoken word performances, I have been going on an emotional roller coaster of just smiling and tearing. Dana is amazing. She is an award-winning Palestinian artist. Her work as an actress, trainer, and consultant has taken her around the world, from performing at the Sydney Opera House to the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Dana was honored as Emirate Woman Artist of the Year. She's also received the Young Arab Award for Entertainer in 2016. And as a poet, Dana uses her theatrical background to give her spoken word pieces a performative edge, addressing various social justice themes through her characters. The Human Spirit Project is Dana's nonprofit commitment dedicated to creative storytelling, which highlights the resilience of the human spirit. And Dana, marhaba. We're going to have time to talk to you, inshallah, but just a quick thank you for joining us all the way from Europe, I think. And moving on to Dr. Mamoun Sakkal, I am humbled to introduce this amazing gentleman whose work in calligraphy has really informed my career as somebody who tries to teach Arabic and has long used his calligraphy and his oeuvre to show our students how it can be done. Now, I certainly could never do it myself, but it's such a delight to have him here today. Of course, he is Syrian American, calligrapher, type designer from Halab, from Aleppo in Syria. He lives in Washington, and in addition to arts, he has degrees in architecture from Syria and the United States, and a PhD in Islamic art history from the University of Washington. He's lectured on Islamic art, Arab calligraphy, Arab typography at universities and conferences in the US, Canada, England, Dubai, Kuwait, Syria, and Uzbekistan. He has been the Arabic language expert for Microsoft for the past 20 years, and his Arabic typefaces are widely used as system fonts. He's received numerous awards in calligraphy, graphics, and type design. And marhaba, دكتور مأمون معنا. يا أهلا وسهلا فيك. يا ميت أهلا وسهلا. And last but definitely not least, this young man, oh my gosh, words fail. His name is Layth Sidiq. I actually just got to interview him privately for my Arabology show, where he played a live piece. He'll be playing two live pieces today. He's such a Rafa Ras Al Arab. I keep telling him this. He's an award-winning violinist, composer, and educator. Toured the world, shared the stage with such major artists as Simon Shaheen, Danilo Perez, Javier Limon. He's performed in prestigious venues like the London Jazz Festival, the Boston Symphony Hall. He presents his own compositions. He mixes Eastern and Western beats together and traditions in such a unique way. His diverse musical upbringing and artistic tastes are truly remarkable. He was recently awarded the 2020 Boston Music Award for Best International Artist, which recognizes exceptional musical achievements in the Massachusetts area. Layth was the director of the Tufts University Arab Music Ensemble. He currently directs the Center for Arabic Culture's Youth Orchestra program in Boston, and this is brand new, and I think I'm allowed, Layth, to say this. He has just been appointed as new artistic director of the New York Arabic Orchestra. Wow. So to introduce you all, I don't want to call you, my children, but I feel so paternal towards each and every one of you. I think we are a chosen family today who decided to come together under the wings of Warren and Dr. Amal to celebrate Arab American culture and music, and especially the way the arts, music, and literature can intersect within our identities. Before we begin, I want to tell our panel, Ya meet ahlan wa sahlan bikum. And if you are celebrating Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak, I am so delighted you joined us. And I want to begin by asking you sort of a general question. This question is meant to, just allow you to introduce yourselves to our audience today. Certainly we can get into it later. Basically, people, when they look at what you've done, and you've done this despite hurdles, despite pandemics lately, despite Islamophobia, despite the demonization of Arabs, where you're reclaiming our Arab American identity, but it's also many identities in one. And sort of the question is always, how do you deal with that in terms of identity? Is it fluid? Is it, and how do you relate it to heritage? And what advice would you give these young people who would like perhaps one day to become a Dana Dajani, a Layth Sidiq, a Nathalie, a Heather, or a Dr. Mamoun? So let me leave this. Let me begin with Nathalie and see if you have sort of. I know it's a loaded question, Nathalie, but in terms of introducing yourself and giving us a brief answer.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Ramzi, for this very generous opening. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Amal and Warren, for having us, and thank you all, panelists. Identity. Oh, it's a loaded question. For me, Arab culture has been really the drums, the beats, the breaths of my career. It's everything that I've drawn from. I've drawn from this place, the Arab world. Whether it was young reading Arabic literature, we spoke about Gibran and so many others. I'm not going to list. And to meeting Mahmoud Darwish at a very young age and him giving me my first writing assignment to write for Al-Carmel, to meeting the incredible Salma Kadra Jayusi, who I was inspired by and who really led the way in translation from Arabic into English. And that really inspired me to do the poetry of Arab women. And of course, the region, the history, the landscape, the soul of the region travels through you. And, the challenges, I think, earlier on was mostly that we weren't given as Arabs and as Middle Easterners space in the American literary mainstream. Of course, that changed a lot after 9/11. And one of the fundamental things is, as Heather was been on this journey with me for the past 20 years, is what happened after 9/11. The community came together. We started magazines. We started the new generation, because we were all in different places. But then there were these spaces, like we are here, like in this space, where we started coming together. As New Yorkers, Heather and I to see, to meet actors that actually could do Arabic accents and it didn't sound Spanish or Russian, who were talented, coming from all over, and editing, writing. This was electrifying. This led us to, one thing led to the other thing, and today, as you could see, it's we're everywhere. We're in on the stage, on the page. It's been incredible. So,
well, alhamdulillah, Nathalie, thank you for always empowering us with your words and your actions. You made reference to the one and only Heather Raffo, who's with us today. I'm just going to address the question to you, sort of an open-ended question, Heather, but in terms of multiple identities, in terms of obstacles we face, I think specifically as Arab Americans or Arabs or people of Arab descent trying to sort of make it in the West. What are your thoughts on this, Heather?
Yeah, well, Nathalie, you've always been such a huge inspiration to me, and it's been incredible being in community with you over the last 20 years. Yeah, I mean, the obstacles, I would say, are particularly unique in the theater, because even though through literature, Arab Americans have been given more room to come forth and have their voice in the theater, there's still quite a gatekeeper. So even though a theater piece can break through, the amount of censorship ahead of that breakthrough was enormous. And I guess I wish I could have the perspective as an Arab American, but my perspective really is as an Iraqi American, right? Because I came of age during the first war with Iraq, and then I became a playwright during the second war. So that's really my entire adult life was shaped by the war and trying to get the American theater establishment to uphold these stories, challenge their audience with these stories, see the beauty in these stories. And I will say it's been 20 years uphill. I do think, even though it's been 20 years uphill, this year is a make or break year in the American theater. It really is a year where everything's shifting. So I have so much hope and excitement for the younger generations, especially in TV, in films, in theater. Things are changing, and they're changing fast. The door has never been as open as it is now.
Thank you so much, Heather. And I know it's very difficult to sort of summarize everything you've been broaching lately, but bravo on Heather Raffo's Iraq Plays, The Things That Can't Be Said, and the amazing topics and the courageous topics you're sort of broaching, never before broached, I think, within the realm of Arab American literature and cultural productions. I'm going to move right now to the one and only Dana Dajani. I told her this, and I'm going to tell her publicly. Yani, just hearing her spoken word performances, she moves you in such a way. You find yourself tearing 1 second, you find yourself sort of laughing 1 second. There's so much recognition. She's بتفش she says what's in our hearts, and she says it so potently. She's able to reach us Arabs and Arab Americans and Westerners at the same time. Dana, I mean, in terms of some of the hurdles you might have encountered because of your views, because of the way you express yourself, and in terms of, you know, something that's happening to so many young Arab Americans, what's your advice on how to sort of deal with it and how to keep going and how to reach Dana Dajani status?
Thank you, Dr. Ramzi and Dr. Amal and Warren for having me, and Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. Some challenges, I mean, it's been really challenging, and the challenges have constantly transformed, whether it was the challenge of how do I get my parents to accept that I want to pursue theater, to, okay, how do I really tap into my ancestry and my heritage when I feel a bit marooned from it? So how do I go back? How do I rediscover language and stories? And then how do I maybe enter a city where I was in Dubai for 10 years that had like a very green theater community. So how do I innovate within the form of spoken word poetry that sometimes can sound really homogenous in rhythm? And so how do I find a way to bring characterization or allow myself to bring characters that you wouldn't otherwise see on stages, like the Hajj and Love Letters from Palestine, for example. So, and then it's continued to change, you know, because I write a long form of poetry. So how do I make that relevant for an audience that's constantly scrolling and only has an attention span for 60 seconds, you know? So it continues to evolve. Or I'm a stage performer, so how do I now present my work for the screen and really fill a space with sound and visual to bring the poem to life? So the challenges are constantly transforming. But I have to tell you, one challenge that I continue to encounter is self-censorship. And I guess my first experience with that was when I was in the Kharabish video, The Real Truth About Palestine, in which we were kind of responding to propaganda films made by Danny Ayalon. And after this was released, and it was released a couple years after we made the film, but I wasn't aware that it was going to be released. And I was bombarded with a lot of hate mail and death threats. this like pushed me into a zone of self-censorship that took me away from myself for years, and that I had to like edge back into what I'm comfortable saying and how much I want to say, and finding my voice again and finding new ways to reclaim my voice. So yeah, self-censorship is always a challenge, and I would encourage you to continue to listen.
Dana, look around you. Look at all these people. Look at, we're with you. Keep fighting the good fight. It is normal, I think, to go through what you're saying. And the self-censorship deserves a forum of its own, because I think we are all facing it. Dana, you're a shining example of how you can actually survive that and go on and remain fearless and remain courageous. We are with you, ya binti. I want to turn to the one and only Dr. Mamoun Sakkal. I don't know how to even address this amazing gentleman who has had such an impact on my career as at Stanford and on my radio show, Arabology. Dr. Mamoun, you know, when you see your fonts being used by Microsoft, when you look at the way your art and your calligraphy touch people's lives in so many different ways. They don't even have to know Arabic. Everybody wants an Arabic tattoo now. You know, I mean, we're talking about the impact of calligraphy today on today's youth, on the way the Arabic language has been turned cool suddenly. I've been at Stanford 22 years. We've been through this. And just how do you feel when you see all that you've realized? And what kind of advice may you have for the young Arab Americans who are eager to also perfect their art, whether calligraphy or Arabic art in general?
Thank you, Dr. Ramzi. I'm humbled by your praise. As you said, sometimes as a producing artist, you may have fans you never know about, but it's always nice to hear from someone who is touched by your work and feels that it makes it gives some sense to their life. So thank you for that as well. I actually started my life as a European artist. I was trained in the European traditions. I lived in Aleppo, Syria, but all my art training and practice was actually according to European traditions, because these were considered the only valid artistic traditions that one would need to learn and work with in the modern time. In the Middle East in general, but in Syria as well, we did not value our own traditional arts, crafts. Calligraphy, for example, was considered a backward art or craft, actually, that I didn't have any interest in growing up. However, when I came of age and became aware of my society and aware of the trends and conflicting values in the world, I started to look for what is authentic to my culture, and went back and tried to find the real values in visual arts of my own tradition. And that changed me slowly from a painter to a graphic designer and to a font or typeface designer now. Arabic language is the most obvious manifestation of our Arab identity. And as a visual artist, I'm the child of two Arabic language teachers. Both my father and my mother taught Arabic language. So I love the language, but now I'm practicing a visual manifestation of that language, and I'm quite thrilled to see that there is some usefulness and some value in the work I do, but I intentionally have wanted all the time to have my art used by the people rather than be isolated in a museum or in a private setting. So my advice to the new generation is look for your heritage and don't discount it, because there are valuable lessons you can learn from. You can still continue to be a contemporary artist and producer, but having connection to your heritage will certainly make it more authentic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mamoun. We can't wait for the presentation today. You're actually going to be sharing a presentation with us a little later. I want to go to Layth, Habibna, Ibnna, Layth Sidiq, who is true. I just interviewed him for my Arabology show. This young man's journey, and look at him, he's so young, and he has done more than most people do in a lifetime. Layth, for you, I mean, I think music has been your instrument. You're so award-winning violinist, but you also sing, and it's very important for you to sort of bring in Iraqi traditions. Of course, you were born in Iraq, but mostly raised in Jordan. But it's very important for you to bring that to a whole new generation of Western and Arab audiences. What is your advice to musicians? We have so many talented musicians no one knows about in the Arab world. From the Mashriq ila al-Maghrib, they send me their songs, they send me their compositions, poetry written under bombshells. I mean, we're talking about truly amazing artists, and they don't know how to get there. Layth, I mean, in a sentence or two, what would be your advice?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ramzi. I would start by saying that I had a very lucky upbringing because my family, both my parents are musicians, and I grew up in a house of music. But I only got to appreciate my Arab culture was when I left the Middle East and came to the US, which is really astounding to me, that I would only realize of the beauty of the Arab culture, music and art was when I was furthest away. And this is due to the kind of the educational system, I think, that is very westernized in the Middle East. And I didn't have even one class of music that discussed Kulthum or Fairuz, or just a bit about the folkloric songs, the stories. And that's so important for us to grow up in the Middle East, to appreciate who we are and where we're from. I think also another challenge that I face is that, to break the stereotype, sometimes that we see Arabs as one nation, and we forget that there are 22 countries in the Arab League, that there are so many languages, there's dialects, food, music, rhythms, maqamat, melodies, songs, there's so much going on there, and that needs to be done through education. I think we're in a really good place right now in the US, where there's fantastic musicians and artists that are doing the work in education to help break that cycle. And I think for me, finally, it's kind of a challenge of identity, because am I Jordanian? Am I Iraqi? Am I Irish? People think I'm Irish all the time, but I think I still haven't found it. But I think music has been a helpful guide throughout this journey. And my advice to people is that don't be afraid to ask for help. I think many of us artists appreciate the doors that have been opened for us in the past, and we are almost all the time open to open those doors also for you and to help you out. So don't feel free to always reach out to us for help.
That's the thing I feel about you, Layth, and about every panelist here, is the fact that you're open to sharing your success. You're open to empowering the new generation. Your very presence here today, your time, your valuable time on a Sunday. I mean, these are all, I think, indications of what we can do despite all the hurdles. I'm going to prepare you now for a musical interlude. Are you guys ready to be taken away? I mean, you have not really lived until you've heard Layth Sidiq perform live. He's going to be performing right now the first of two numbers today. This one is called the Samai Lami, and it's by Ghanem Haddad, who is a musician, oud player, violinist from Baghdad and Iraq. Very important musician who recently passed away and whose music lives on through Layth. So he's going to be playing this piece for us. I think we all should unmute and frankly kick back and just let the music take you away. Forget about pandemics, forget about problems. Layth's music will do it. And then, of course, he'll be playing a more upbeat piece for us later of his own composition. So, what do you think, guys? Are you ready to hear Layth Sidiq and Samai Lami?
I suggest people stay muted, otherwise we won't hear his music.
I agree, Shadiya. Shukran. I'm going to mute myself too in a second. I want to give Layth a chance to get his instruments ready to hear. And please check out his amazing 2 CDs. I mean, he's got 2 officially released CDs, Son of Tigris and Hamza. Boy, I just put those on, and whatever troubles I'm having that day, poof, they dissipate. All right.